Late checkout at the lake house at 11:58. The extra towel wasn't for me. I'm not jealous of bodies, I'm jealous of requests. Bodies tell the truth if you stop staging them. Requests announce what a person thinks they're owed. At 11:58 a.m., while I was rinsing espresso out of two small cups and trying to decide whether we were going to be gentle or brave today, my phone vibrated with the courtesy of a front desk clerk. Late checkout confirmed, the banner said. Property, Lake House at Birch Cove. Time, 2:00 p.m. Housekeeping note, 2 towels delivered. We don't have a reservation at the lake house, I thought, before remembering that in this relationship, we is a moving target. Miles had texted at 9:12. Run gone long. Don't worry. Lunch. Which is how runners apologize for needing distance and lovers apologize for needing air. The address line under the hotel name remembered files I didn't sign. 2 towels is a sentence that knows your habits better than you want to admit. I didn't call. I did the thing I always do when the night is trying to extend itself through noon. I set the phone face down and tapped the spoon against the sink to make the kind of noise that funnels panic back into the human world. At 12:06, our front door cleared its throat, and Miles stepped in with a hoodie he doesn't deserve and legs that would have forgiven him if they could talk. He reached for a mug, found it already warm in his hand, and kissed the air beside my cheek, our administrative truce. "You're late," I said, which is a fact dressed like a question. He nodded without flinching. "I wanted to see the water," he said, which is not an explanation but is at least a picture. He set the mug down, reached into his pocket, and a keycard flicked out, bounced, and lay on the counter like a decision that had learned to be plastic. The lake house logo was printed on its face in a font that believed in itself too much. "Did you borrow scenery?" I asked. "Or did the scenery borrow you?" My voice remembered how to be even. It forgot how to hide the shiver at the end. "It's nothing," Miles said, the sentence I hate more than any swear. "Damien needed a shower. He's in town for the residency thing on the North Trail. The bathrooms out there are, you know. He texted me and he didn't finish. He didn't have to. He was clean in a way the river couldn't have managed." "Damien of the residency," I said, because names are useful when you need to measure blood. I had met him once, a night like a wrong envelope, the kind of man who turns the air into a staging area. He and Miles had a way of standing close that didn't forget who might be watching, like children who have seen adults fall and learned not to point. I'm not a detective. I edit sound for documentaries that keep choosing people who don't get the endings they deserve. If you give me a lie, I don't know where to put the echo. I dried the cups with a towel that had already done its job. He watched my hands and I watched his throat, and we let the truth we'd already read settle onto the table like steam. At 12:40, I texted Matt because that's what I do when I want to choose the right humiliation. "Lunch," I wrote. "I have a towel count and a story that wants to be hired." He sent the time and the reminder he thinks he invented. One question only. At the bar with the napkins brave enough to be linen, I told him about the banner and the key card and the way 2 towels is a statistic pretending to be an excuse. He nodded like a mechanic listening for a rattle. "Ask why," he said, "or ask who." "Not both. If you ask who, you're letting the hotel write your scene." I went home with his sentence under my tongue. Miles had showered again, the small betrayal of lemon and steam at his collarbone. He put both palms flat on the table like a man in a class he doesn't want to fail. "Which question?" he said. I turned my phone face up, the banner still there like a clerk who didn't want to leave their desk. "Why late checkout?" I asked. "Why 2 towels?" He looked at the window the way people do when they want glass to do the sinning for them. "Because the part wasn't coming," he said. "Because we ran until the trail started wanting to own us and we had to stop. Because he said he was cold and I was pretending not to be. Because the lake house said they were between housekeeping, and if I could be quick, I could open the door for someone who didn't want to admit he needed it. Because when you sweat next to someone for miles, you start believing their skin is a room you can enter without knocking. "Did you knock?" I said, breaking Matt's law and watching Miles forgive me for it. "No," he said, and the word landed like a coin someone had already decided was heads. "We didn't do that. I did other things wrong. I carried his bag and didn't have to. I watched him breathe and learned too much. I asked for 2 towels and told myself I was being kind. I left the key because I didn't want to pocket mercy." "I'm going to hate how much sense that makes," I said, which was my mouth trying to be good to both of us. We tried it on in the afternoon like a new shirt we might pretend we already owned. He made lunch badly and awkwardly, wiped the counter in tight circles, asked if I wanted to see clips from the run like a man showing his wrists. I nodded and sat with our thighs making choices under the table, while the little videos showed roots and water and light. Damien's laugh entered the frame once without his face, and I let myself dislike it openly. At 5:12, the lake house sent a second courtesy. "Thank you for your stay. Your late checkout has been extended to 4:00 p.m. A second towel count would have been obscene. They knew that. I didn't tell Miles right away because cruelty needs rehearsal. Instead, I stood behind him, slid my hands under his shirt, and let my fingers memorize the small places that forgiveness always has to pass through. He made the small sound he makes when he's being honest without thinking about it. I kissed the point hungry men always forget, and saved us from being only elegant. At 9:37, Damien texted Miles in a message bubble I read without asking. "I owe you, not just the shower." A winking dot that thought it had earned work. Miles didn't answer. I didn't insist. We slept badly, which is to say we were decent to each other in the dark and let the air take care of the rest. At 10:03 the next morning, my thumb did what thumbs do when you call it insomnia and it's actually curiosity. I called the front desk. I performed lost and found with an innocence I didn't deserve. "Did anyone leave a key on the counter yesterday?" I asked, because there is a science to audacity if you learn it properly. The woman on the line was kind, which I hate because it works. "We found one in the hallway," she said. "That happens when guests have their hands full." She sounded like mercy. I sounded like a man writing a character he doesn't want to play. We are not saints. The next evening we chose heat as method. I pressed him into the door before it decided to judge us, and he pulled my shirt open like he had instructions from somewhere nicer. We are 2 men who have learned how to be generous with the thing that wants to be spent. His mouth learned my name again, and the kitchen forgot it was supposed to be anything but a room we paid to go dangerous in. My hand taught a line along his ribs how to be a sentence. He asked for a minute, and then gave me more than one. We were kind to each other in the ways that make you unkind to other plans. If I could paint you the shape of my hand at the base of his spine without losing my residency on a platform that likes virtue, I would. You'll have to make do with a throat you'd recognize in a crowd and a shoulder that still holds my mouth like it belongs. 2 days later, we ran into Damien at the market where good peaches are as rare as uncomplicated apologies. He said both our names the way good actors read stage directions, and Miles moved closer to me in that almost invisible way that still deserves a medal you never get to wear. Damien's face was exactly the kind of trouble the city likes to rent out by the hour. He asked after our show. He said the North Trail had taught him to be a better animal. He said the lake house made a good frame for a day that couldn't decide what it was about. He was trying to be neutral and failing gorgeously. I found myself liking him because some fights are easier when your enemy is easy to want. After he left, Miles slid a peach into the bag and then pressed his mouth to the hinge of my jaw. "The place he knows is where I keep my math. If there's a rule to add," he said, Let it be about telling you the worst parts first. I nodded because he was already doing it, and because the orange magnet on the fridge is tired of new commandments. He got an invitation 2 weeks later, 7 days at a mountain residency with light that likes to forgive and rooms that think they can solve people if they just make the windows big enough. He forwarded the PDF with every attachment visible like a man who had learned something about where courage keeps its paperwork. I want to go without disappearing, he wrote. I'll send pages, not alibis. When I get back, ask me what I wrote before you ask me what I did. I taped 2 sentences to the fridge without asking permission. Addresses in the open. A good night here voice note every day. He went. The first night he sent me an audio clip that smelled like pine and fatigue. Today the table forgave me, he said, and I understood that as a man in love with both furniture and verbs. The third night he sent nothing, and the app tried to persuade me to invent a story. I moved the chair to the middle of the kitchen because our therapist thinks geometry can fix mania. Bodies believe what mouths can't. He called the next morning, with a voice that sounded like someone had remembered the instrument is supposed to be the point of practice. When he returned, he put 2 pages on the table and watched them with the fear that knows pride is doing its job. They're not good, he said. They're mine, I said, and I will be loyal to that sentence until the kettle gives up calling itself useful. He leaned against me and the room learned how to be kind again. The lake house still emails, which makes them boring and me, finally, safe. I didn't throw away the blue wristband. It lives in a drawer with other relics that taught us something about invitation and weight. Sometimes I take it out and roll it into a circle until it remembers it used to be a shape that made demands. The next time we passed the cove, the water did what water does, made being honest look like a posture. Miles parked. We stood with our hands in our pockets like men who remember how to be 20 without needing to be stupid. Do you want to go in? He asked, and the question did not try to pretend it was a test. No, I said. I want to go home. He put his palm against my back, the square inch where I keep the courage for small things, and we did that exactly. Some nights are still violent with possibility. Sometimes a text with a location pin tries to practice verbs in my pocket. Sometimes the hotel thinks it can audition for Rival. But the kettle sings at 7:05, and the chair goes to the middle of the kitchen when words want to riot, and the orange magnet holds the page as if paper can save men. If another afternoon offers us a late checkout banner with the kind of honesty you have to earn, I hope I remember the humiliating, useful acts that made us almost trustworthy. Put water on. Move the chair. Ask why before who. Hold the moment before mouths find their excuse and let it finish being a scene. Wait for the key in the lock like it's a sound you can tune to. I don't know if we got away with anything. I know that when Miles says here, my body has stopped auditioning for suspicion and chosen to believe him without making him run laps. I know 2 towels is a measurement that sometimes means kindness and sometimes means trouble, and I have learned to be good at telling the difference. I know the city keeps making rooms that want our names, and that some nights we teach them together and some nights we don't. I know the lake house did not invent mercy. It only rents it out by the hour. We pay for hours with mornings and the discipline of telling the worst parts first. If we're any good at this, we'll keep being the address. And if we can't, we'll at least be the map that admits its misprints and still finds a way to show us home.